part is recorded, but it is not broadcast.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and Rod will edit that out of the record.
Right, but if you are setting up the broadcast now, well, whatever. Sorry.
Basically, yeah, the private part's at the end, and
okay.
we're gonna do the public part first. And so basically, all that means is if you want to insult Rod, don't do it.
I did say this was live.
Okay, cool. We're broadcasting. Excellent. Let's see here. Welcome to Node.js CTC Foundation meeting for August 3rd, 2016. And we're going to get right to it with the stand-up. So let's start with Anna.
Hi, just the usual issues and PR review. That's it. And next is Bradley.
Sure. So I went to TC39 last week. Most of what we got back was we need to take our idea of modules in a different direction. A lot of things we thought could work are not going to, so we're trying to figure out what that means now. Yep.
Who is we here? Is that the TC39 or is that
realistically, Node has to figure out how to make it work. So when I say we, I'm more talking about Node has to figure out how to make it work.
Okay, that sounds like something that'll be on an agenda at some point soon, I have to imagine. Okay. Next up is Ben.
Hey, nothing special to report. I don't know who's next, but
It'd be Nikita.
Nikita is next. He says in the chat he's having mic issues. Are they resolved?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. I'm working on the NPM dataset rebuilding tool, the one that builds the dataset that I use for grabs, and some comments on issues and pull requests as usual. Nothing else. Next is Chris or Colin.
I was on vacation last week, and
Chris.
this week I was just reviewing issues and pull requests. Next is Evan.
Yeah, I've done a little work cherry picking stuff to V6, and then I've been working on getting commit validator running for PRs with some of the build team. Next is Jeremiah.
Hello. I was mostly away last week. Other than that, I've really just been doing some experimentation with CreationX's Nucleus.js, and that's pretty much it. Fedora's next if he's here. I don't think he's here. That would make James next.
Okay. Node Summit last week. Continuing exploration of the possibility of an HTTP2 implementation in core. Had some interesting discussions around that. Continuing evaluation of the WhatWGURL implementation, some foundation TSEs, miscellaneous stuff, and reviewing PRs, catching up still from vacation. So. Me, Josh, you're next.
Nothing exciting here, mostly internal stuff and a bit of vacation. Next is Michael.
Okay, I was away at Node Summit last week, so catching up on issues after getting back. I'm starting to add Linux 1 release machines and jobs for nightlies. Just got access to the first of 3 new AIX machines from OSUSL, so starting to configure that so that we can add it to the CI, and landed a few PRs for minutes from past meetings. Next is Michael Rogers.
I believe Michael is here, is he? No.
I don't think he is, so I think Brian is next.
Brian, if you're talking, you can't
yeah,
hear you.
Brian said he had to step out, so
Okay.
I suggest go to the next.
All right, Brian just wrote commenting on issues and PRs. Next is Ali.
So I was busy with Node Summit and internal issues most of last week. Besides that, I've been working on shepherding some backports, and also started working on writing up a proposal on how to manage V8 LTS branches, a continuation of a discussion we had in the LTS working group. I think next is Bert.
Hello. Yeah, you never see me anymore. I coincidentally commented on an issue, but that's all I did. I'm mostly here to announce that I'm going to step down from the CTC, and I was drawn here by a discussion about real path issues that I am interested in. The next, I don't know.
Next is Miles, who is not here, so that makes it me. Been updating CTC governance documentation. Been trying to schedule some onboarding. One person had to postpone trying to onboard Franziska next. And I'm welcoming additional nominees for onboarding, fixed a flaky test, investigating some other flaky tests, and that's all I've got. Did we miss anybody who's on the conference?
Saul.
Yeah, I'm here. I was dragged by the real path issue, but I don't really have anything to add at the moment. I think everything is on the issue, so I'm sort of around to clarify whatever is needed.
Okay, cool. That looks like everybody. So let's get to it. So let's let's start with the nomination of for adding Anna to the CTC. This is issue number 7607. I don't think there's, well, I don't know, is there any discussion we need to have, or should we just go right to the ayes and nays and whatnot?
Yeah, let's
I
move to
haven't
the
seen
vote.
any objections, so let's go.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, all opposed say nay, please. All abstaining, please indicate. Okay, Anna, welcome and congratulations by unanimous assent, vote, whatever it is. You're on the core technical committee.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome.
Definitely
Yes, welcome.
I think, oh, I'm sorry, you're trying to say something?
No, sorry, that was just
Okay.
my microphone.
Okay. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Rod will add you to the appropriate mailing list or lists and probably send you other information. But I don't think anything that will be a surprise. So I'm very, very happy about this. And but I think we should move on to the next item, if that's okay with everybody, which is reverting FS changes. This is issue 7846. And where this was left at the end of the last meeting was there was a bunch of conversation that was going to be moved back to GitHub. And it was...
Is this the change that makes omitting the callback an error? What is it I'm trying to say? An immediate error.
Right. And I think there are 2 PRs in to revert it. And I believe that, I don't know that there's anything, is anybody able to frame this? I don't know if there's anything to talk about except that, like, what do we need to do to get those PRs to land?
So yeah, we talked last week about 7846, the one that is on the agenda. Miles split off one of the commits into the into 7950 because that was requested here on the call last week. I don't really think it's controversial or anything. Yes, that it's what Ben said. Like it's the one that made fs dot something without a callback throw an immediate error. Those two reverts are necessary because one of them builds upon the other, and yeah, they are holding up the real path revert because they otherwise would conflict. That's everything, I think.
It appears to me that both PRs have been open long enough and have LGTMs, and I don't think there's anything stopping any of this at this point. They might need a CI run or something, but I don't even think it needs that.
Yeah, I would like to see a CI run, a SitGem run, and just some additional testing to make sure that we have exactly the right set of reverts. Because right now, I mean, we've had a number of different conversations that I think kind of are bleeding into one another, that all relate to FS module. I just want to make sure that we are very clear on what's reverted.
So normally, I think Miles would probably be the person who would kick off those Canary in the Gold Mine runs, but he's up at Cascadia Fest this week and then flying across the continent. Any chance you or someone else might have the bandwidth to tackle that?
Yeah, I could kick off the runs. Yeah. So.
Kicking off SitGem runs is pretty easy.
Yeah.
It's like running the normal CI almost.
Yeah, I did it once and I thought it was easy and then it blew up, but it turned it. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So
the errors from it sometimes can be hard to read.
Yeah. So cool. All right. Great. So James, you'll pick up the ball and push the CI end of it forward, and if all looks good, land it and get this off the agenda. Is that the plan, at least?
Yep.
What about making it print a deprecation warning? Because I believe that was the plan, or at least I saw it mentioned somewhere.
I think there's pretty much agreed on that. That will be the plan after the reverts have landed. Yeah.
Okay, and is someone taking responsibility for that?
I think that is what the fourth eye sector Brian is planning to do.
Okay. Okay, cool.
So is that going to be a process warning or a deprecation warning?
So what was that?
Is that going to be a process warning or a deprecation warning?
I think you mean a warning it prints at runtime when you call it without a callback.
Right. So yeah, we have. I just want to just double check. Are we going to do an actual deprecation warning or not? Like with util print deprecation warning.
What are we talking about deprecating? Are we talking about reverting this and then issuing a deprecation warning that it's going to be coming again?
That was the plan, I think, and it makes sense because not passing a callback has been, well, not exactly deprecated, but at least discouraged for years.
So, James, do you have a strong opinion about one or the other?
Not a strong opinion about one or the other, but deprecation warnings have always been Semver major. A process emit warning would be a Semver minor, or even a patch.
So why don't we let Sector Prion submit something and we can hash it out on GitHub. Go ahead,
so yeah, just so that's clear, like he already opened NPR to print a warning instead, but like that would probably work instead of just reverting. But like we agreed on reverting last week, and it's holding up the real path PR. So I still think that's a good idea. But if anyone wants to have a look, that's PR 7897, which is just for warning, and I think it's a deprecation warning. Yeah, it is.
I don't think.
Sounds like. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I don't think unbreaking something that was already going to be broken in a major and then moving it to a deprecation is really Semper Major worthy?
I know that someone on some of the issues around this a while ago commented that they actually like to do that, sometimes calling FS functions without callbacks, just like because they don't care if an error is thrown. I don't know if that makes any difference, but I'd prefer to be careful. I don't see any reason not to do this in a Semper Major.
And as for whether or not a deprecation warning is Semper Major, James just submitted a PR outlining explicitly our deprecation policy. And according to it, that would be Semper Major, right, James? And so,
yes.
so we should. So if you feel that deprecating it should not be. Oh, but you're talking
I'm
about
talking about unbreaking it. That it
Yeah.
was already broken in a major. We could have deprecated in the last major, but we didn't because we, well,
yeah, I see what you're saying.
In effect, of that point, screwed up. So why not just change it to a deprecation? It, like, we already had the major for that effectively. That's what I'm wondering.
Okay.
I mean, that might be a little bit weird logic, but
are we talking about
I just want to make sure I'm clear. So going ahead and making a deprecation, since we changed it with a major, we're fixing it. We're just going to change it to a major deprecation. Is that what you're saying?
I would like to ask that since we do have a full agenda, that we all agree that we should revert, and then the deprecation warning, whether or not that's Semper Major or not, that can be discussed on the issue in GitHub, if that's okay. And if there's no consensus on that, then we can talk about. Then someone can slap a CTC meeting tag on that issue. Is that okay with everybody?
Yep.
Okay, if that's the case, then let's talk about real path, which so last week we talked about real path, and the end of it was that Anna, Trevor, or Alexis would move it forward. And we also have Saul here today. So my understanding, based on the conversation we just had, is that basically the only thing holding it up at this point is the 2 reverts that need to happen that we just talked about. Is there anything else that needs to be talked about with real path?
I don't think so.
I have one tiny thing I mentioned in the current PR that reverts it, which is the fact that it adds one test for a condition that it might not be correct depending how you look at it. It's not big. It's about the subset that drives on Windows. So basically, if you have a long path and you substitute to the Z unit, the new real path would actually result into the right one, the one that points to the real deal. But the one in the JS version gives you like Z colon whatever file. Some people have apparently relied on this for shortening paths. And I guess I'm okay with that. The question is, if we add a test for it, does it mean that if we ever find a way to make the C version fast and good, but it works the other way, it's incorrect or not?
So, I mean, the question here would be what the right semantics,
Exactly.
It's clean slate. What would be the right semantics? In my opinion, it should resolve subset drives to their original place. And I don't think people are relying on the fact that real path won't. Like they use subs as a tool to make short paths in general. That won't be broken by this. But the whole reason we do real path in the first place is to avoid a module that is accessible from through different paths, being loaded multiple times. And so, if you imagine that, D might be subset to C foo, and you're loading the module from both C foo and from D, then you will still get 2 copies. So the goal would be really to resolve to the final path.
I agree with that, but the other thing was brought up by someone, as in, if you go beyond the the short path length on Windows, some tool gave some problems. I can't remember what and where. So they were like substring the project path to a unit. So you would get like a very short path.
That's true, but like what you will do in Node.js, like if your real path, you're probably going to use the path in Node.js, and then the path length limitation doesn't really apply. Although the path length limitation is 64K, so that it's long enough for pretty much everything.
Yeah. So my point is that right now there is a test that checks for this, and I don't think the test is correct.
If you mean not necessarily correct, if we want to resolve it some way else in the future, that kind of comes to the deprecation policy and breaking changes policies that we have already. So if we message that we're changing real path and that comes with it, that may or may not be a problem. It could still be a problem. It's hard to know.
The thing is, it has been added as a sort of regression test in the sense that, well, if we add real path again, coming from livuv, for example, let's just make sure that this passes, because otherwise we end up in enchanted territory. And unfortunately, all the conditions that were broken with it are weird edge cases that are very hard to test for. But this one, which is easy to test for, is actually not an issue, in my opinion, which Bert seems to share. So testing, for example, IM disk, RAM disks, which apparently are more used than I thought, is kind of hard to test. You rely on the machine having some software installed and some unit mapped. So we can't test for that, let's say. And that is broken, we know. Yep. But this one can be tested for, and it's not broken, depending on how you look at it.
Just one thing for clarification. Reverting to the JS real path implementation would mean restoring the behavior from pre-version 6, right?
Yes.
Even with respect to so I don't think it's worth debating that right now, possibly, because like we pretty much agreed that the revert should happen, and it should happen quickly because it has been hanging around for a long time. And yeah.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but the test doesn't need to be part of the revert, for instance. It wasn't there in the first place. It tries to test what the new code did that is now deemed incorrect. And what I argue is that if we land that and then tomorrow I come with an implementation that works but does not pass this test, I'm going to get shouted at because, oh, it doesn't pass the test. And I will say the test is incorrect. And then we'll be here again.
Then we'll discuss that later when that new implementation is there, I guess.
Another option is just to submit a pull request to remove that test, like just separate of everything else. Just make the case in a pull request that the test is invalid. Here's why, and I'd like to remove it.
Yeah, or move it to known issues test if you prefer.
So just from my understanding, Saul, the old implementation would not resolve substituted drives, but the new one did, right?
Yes, that's the case.
But I think like it is desirable that like in ideal future implementation does resolve them. So like we will have to revert the test now because it will not pass with like when we go back to the old implementation.
No,
but ideally
it will pass because the old implementation doesn't resolve it. It will say that the file is in Z, not that it's in C, users, bird, programs.
Right. Okay. In that case, you should probably just remove the test, because it's like it tests for undesirable behavior.
Yeah. So the test is part of the revert PR. So I'm just saying we could drop that commit, and it doesn't delay the process of landing everything.
I would argue like in that case leave the test in, because at least it helps catch changes in behavior, and that means that if you change the behavior further in the future, you will know. You will be deliberate about it and change the test as well.
I agree with Bert there. Can we take that back to the issue?
Yeah, sure. Just separate up, but that's all I got. So
I don't think the intention is definitely not to revert to like Not even necessarily to revert to a better implementation, but to revert to an implementation that the ecosystem has been functioning better on. So we should move towards making more incremental changes if possible, than to make it actually better.
Agreed. Okay, so it sounds like there's agreement on the path forward here. Is there anything else to discuss about RealPath?
What I would recommend in the future is to try to restore this path, this thing that now is getting reverted, but start with Unix only, because it's very simple and it will probably work there.
Just a question: are we reverting to where the cache argument still exists?
No, that's being removed in the revert PR and replaced by the encoding option. I have voiced a concern about that there, because I think it will require that all intermediate paths that may be encountered when resolving symlinks must have the same encoding, or all UTF-8 or something. But I think that's just something one has to take now.
That doesn't sound like a full revert then. Okay.
No, it's a revert of the internal implementation, not the API change, not the signature change.
Last I heard, the new parameter that was added would still not break the cache argument, and it was better to revert with the cache argument due to performance reasons that were removed because of the internal change. That may be incorrect. I'm not sure.
Yeah, if I understood the discussion from last week right, we did not agree on that. Because I think what Trevor said was that not including the cache right now would give more freedom in the future to do other kinds of performance improvements, like a hidden cache in libuv or something.
Or even bringing back the new implementation should the various issues with it be resolved.
Ben had a question about the FS revert, since we've gone back to talking about that.
Oh yeah, so I was wondering, I'm a little confused. These are changes targeted at v7, not v6, right? So the next semver major. Okay, yeah. Then I don't see an issue with reverting and putting in a deprecation warning, because hey, it's going to be a major anyway, so
it will be landing in v6 though, right?
You mean the deprecation warning or the revert?
Or all of it?
The revert, all of it. The idea is to get this revert in for v6 before it goes to LPS.
Did the changes from that were being reverted actually make it into v6? Because they were tagged semver major too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was why I was confused, because I don't think they were ever landed in v6. So there's nothing to revert.
I think so too, yeah. They didn't make it into v6.
I think James was talking about the real path change, and we're now back talking about the previous topic, the FS callback change.
Yeah, I mean, this is actually part of the challenge of the conversation. There's too many things going on in FS that we need to make sure stay clear. The real path change that would be reverted is in v6, and that change, that revert, would land in v6. The other changes regarding the throwing the errors on the callbacks, that is only in master. That would not land in v6.
I thought you said that the real path changes were dependent on that. They can't be dependent on that then.
No, the real path changes occurred before.
So why revert the other one?
So that they're causing other issues.
If the revert for real path were to take place in the v6.x branch, there would be no conflict. But like the semver majors that are to be reverted by Miles' PR, they would conflict with reverting the real path change.
On master.
On master, yes.
Okay.
Because the change was the change was backported, right? Well, okay, yeah, I'm gonna stop actually talking.
If we do a backport type of revert, where it's not just a straight up reverting the commit, right? Then we could do it. We could possibly do it without it, the modifications. But because of the changes that have occurred, we can't backport. We can't simply revert the commit to a real path without also reverting the other changes, if that makes sense.
On master.
On master. So
but James, would it not be possible then to revert FS, revert real path, and then reapply FS, and then fix all the conflicts?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
It's just more work, and that's why that's why I'm kind of concerned here that I'm not sure if we have all of the steps kind of lined up yet, and that we're all on the same page of what those steps are. I think we're all on the same page on what needs to happen, but
I'd like to hear Anna say what she was going to say, and then I think Nikita might have something to say.
Yeah, I think the path is actually kind of clear. Like we first do Miles revert PR, then we do the real path revert, and then probably Sector Priyan will have to reapply his semver major changes that were previously reverted and turn that into the deprecation warning.
Yeah, I agree that it seems pretty straightforward.
I want to add that the comments that are being reverted added some unrelated tests. Well, they are related, but they won't be broken by reverting those comments. So I don't see why we should revert those tests that are still working even when the actual changes are reverted. Could we keep them?
Not sure I quite got that.
Are you referring to Saul's previous comments?
No. The pull requests that revert some comments, some previous comments, also revert new tests that were introduced in that comments that are not necessarily related to the actual changes that were made in that comments. So could we revert the changes, revert the tests that are broken with reverting the actual changes, but keep the tests that are not broken with reverting the actual changes?
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so it sounds like this is the same as the test that Saul was alluding to, and consensus was to keep the test. So I think we are in agreement with Nikita.
Is there anything else to talk about with RealPath or FS and RealPath? Okay, in that case, great. Let's hope Canary in the Gold Mine goes smoothly and we get some quick reverts and life is beautiful again. Let's move on to V450 proposal. This is Miles's. He's not here, but he really wants people to test the RCs. I don't know if anybody else wants to add something, maybe James or someone.
The only extra info I have is I know we've been building them internally at IBM and haven't come across any problems. So.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. Sorry, it was on mute. Same thing. I've been doing some testing and I have not seen anything of concern.
Awesome. Hopefully you've communicated that to Miles, but if not, I bet he'd love to hear it. He probably knows though, because he works with you guys. All right, in that case, I'm going to move along to drop support for Visual Studio 2013 and V7. Based on the PR, this seems uncontroversial now. That who can frame this?
It's too bad Joe is not on the call, but so I think the conclusion is that we can move away from VS 2013 without too much trouble. Yeah, I think everyone was in agreement that that is a good thing. So yeah, don't know if there's anything else to discuss. Betje?
Well, I'm no longer a Windows person, but it seems that Alexis is also in favor. That's a big +1 for me. The only question I have is what this means for compiled add-ons, and whether Node.js already supports VS. Well, what have we nowadays? 16.
Yeah, I talked with Joao. This is Josh. I talked to Joao about it a little bit last week, and he didn't find any problems, although we don't completely guarantee if you compile with a later version and the modules are compiled with 2013, the ABI compatibility, but everything that he tested was okay. He ran it through SitGem and he added Node.js to the CI system. So I don't think it's a problem.
I think a few people have looked at this and tested it and haven't had any issues with ABI issues in practice with doing a switch. So
yeah, I was gonna say I think for 7 it seems pretty safe. For 6 it might be a bit late to do that change, but
yeah, and I since we also guarantee ABI stability, it seems a little odd to change the compiler for an existing version.
I think one of the reasons we were thinking about it was because of the LTS, that we wanted to be on 2015 for LTS so that we're not stuck with 2013 all the way through.
Yeah. Yep, that was the main argument for landing it in 6.
Right. I would suggest to make this then a separate issue. Like the discussion here is clearly about V7, or like clearly, I don't know. That's what the issue says. And I think we are in agreement that we can do it for V7 and for V6. Yeah, I don't know. It's not that I care very much, but
yeah, I think the complexity there really just comes down to like a CI environment. But it doesn't seem controversial in any way with regards to V7. I think if we get this landed in master, we can do some additional tests between now and October. And if it just looks like things would be okay, then I say, maybe September timeframe we revisit and decide if we're going to go ahead and do it in V6.
Yeah, it really comes down to how much community testing we'll get in that last few months, right?
Yep. Right now we're only 2 months away from that, so.
Yeah, exactly. It's just that there's not a lot of time, and once it gets landed, you don't want to be switching it like just a month before.
Okay, any other comments on this topic? Okay, in that case, let's move on to don't inherit from object prototype. I believe where we left this last was that Brian was going to seek, try to get try to ask Chris Dickinson about his concerns. And I pinged Chris last night, I think, but I think he's traveling or something. Anyway, Brian, is there any news on this?
Not really. I last week, right after the meeting here, I had pinged Chris also, and I guess we're just waiting on him then, whenever he gets time to, I guess, respond or whatever in that thread.
Do we remove that from the agenda then? It doesn't sound like we necessarily need it on for next week.
I suppose so. I don't. Yeah, I guess until we hear from Chris, we could probably just remove it for now.
I mean, so I just removed the label from the issue just now. I mean, is there?
Removing it from the agenda is fine. I mean, it's like, I'd rather it just not be an open question indefinitely, though. Right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, is there like, can we like, is it problematic to I mean, well, yeah, go ahead, James. You should finish. I'll stop.
I was just gonna say it's been sitting there for months. There's been plenty of discussion about it. We've heard from folks like Doug Wilson with regards to Express, who sees it as a positive change. He understands that there'll need to be some stuff that changes, and it could break some folks, but he's weighed in positively on it. I'd rather not hold it up waiting for a response without any kind of indication that it may be coming anytime soon. So I mean, we have 2 months. We have just over 2 months before V7 comes out, and it's a major change. So if we don't land it within the next 2 months, we have to wait 6 more months for it to be released. So.
Yeah, I wouldn't object to landing it with the understanding that someone might, if that makes someone panic and we need to revert it in the next, a week later, that's okay. But I don't know if everybody else feels that way though.
I'm slightly negative on this one. I don't think we should make a similar major change once and then another one in the future. I think let's figure out how. If we are going to change this, it would be much better if we figure out if and how we can get to maps.
Or what if we just did the map implementation now?
I explained this last time. It needs a new API. If you do the map implementation now, there's way too much stuff that people rely on this as being a regular object for.
Right.
Please do not do that.
I agree with Jeremiah. I just think that breaking the ecosystem twice doesn't make sense. So I'm slightly negative on this. I think we should target something around maps for V8 or longer time frame, and I think that will have a much better performance behavior, because that's really the motivation here, right? We want to improve performance and we are willing to break the ecosystem to do that.
No, we primarily want to make sure you can't set properties from outside sources that could break your application.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. But yeah, I think if we were to, like, if the goal is to eventually move to maps, let's just do one step.
I am proposing to postpone the changes until the new APIs for that.
The new which? Sorry, I didn't get that.
The new API that you're proposing. So is what Ali proposing here is to postpone all the server major changes until we have a final view of what the new API would be.
I agree with holding off until we move to a map.
Okay.
I don't think I agree with that, because I think it's impractical. I think an API to make that will not necessarily get made. It will get stalled out and take very long. probably not by V8, by version 8. This is mostly driven by past experiences with looking into how you might have to change those APIs. It's very involved.
I think if we're going to switch to maps, I think we'd probably want more than enough time to get at least some kind of, at least, I don't know if there's documentation updates we would have to do at the very least, but, probably some active messaging or something to let people know that sometime down the road, that it'll change so that enough people can be prepared for it.
Right. Yes, it probably needs like a series of EPs or something. So if we do that change, we'll still, if it's not very communicated in a long time and or shimmable for some significant amount of time, we'll run into an issue where there's still going to be so much of the ecosystem using the old part, it'll be extremely hard to switch off of. So this, like, you really need to think about like moving off of things longer term then, because it's not that easy to maintain a map limitation and then also guarantee that this old API works, even though this old API is not documented. It is very widely in use for anything that manipulates headers. As an example, Express uses it pretty extensively because it's the only way to get at this set information.
One idea might be to convert the old API to a proxy and introduce a new sort of map-based API, and then we can slot in deprecation warnings inside the proxy.
Yeah. I could take a first stab at this. I honestly don't think that would actually take too much effort to have a sham if we do go the proxy route. But it's worth, we need to take some time and make sure that we have the proper tests in place and make sure it's stable. So I'll take it to do a first pass at it.
Well, I was just going to say that I think, well, I mean, I haven't checked recently with like V8 5.1 or 2 maybe, but the last I had looked, that like proxy performance wasn't really that good, so that might be a serious issue there as far as accessing and setting or whatever.
Yeah, so the idea would be that, for the version 8 timeframe, we want to deprecate it. So we know that we're not breaking the ecosystem, but we really would like people to move to the new API. So for deprecated paths, I think it might be acceptable to take a performance hit.
I do not think that, well, moving to an entirely new API is reasonable for the ecosystem until V8, but if we have a full patch that, or something that can help users move over to it, that might work. If people feel strongly about this, we should put together a proposal, and I might be willing to help write that since I did some amount of investigation work on that in the past. But I don't think it should hold up this because it's not really, I mean, they're pretty different changes.
Yeah, this is not a very, the change we're talking about now is not the type of ecosystem breakage that we'll see with, the API change to maps if things go that way, right?
I don't necessarily agree with that. If that lands, I'll have like personal code I'll have to change.
If the current removing of the prototype properties from HTTP lands, that's what you're talking about?
Yeah. I mean, it's probably more prevalent in application code than module code, but I don't know.
So you're saying you object to landing this, but you'd be okay with an API change to map?
No, I'm not objecting to. I mean, it would still be a Semver major, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I'm okay with that as long as it's Semver major. Because it actually improves the HTTP module. I mean, wasn't that the main point behind it? to access the headers that are same as like a built-in name?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. So.
All right, so we still have one more item to talk about, and we are, or now two more items. It looks like somebody, I'm guessing Bert added a second item there. So I'm wondering if we, I don't think we're gonna resolve this in 5 minutes, but is it still everyone's feeling that this does not need to be talked about next week, or should we talk about this next week? Okay, I'm not hearing anything, so I'm going to just leave the label off, and if someone wants it to be back on the agenda, they can just put the label back on.
So we're talking about the, for which one? I'm sorry, taking the label off of which one?
The label is off of the HTTP object prototype one, but anyone can add the label back. Okay, yeah, that one didn't go the way I thought it would. So okay, let's quickly, we were going to touch in only briefly about the what WG URL standard implementation, and then slot a big chunk of time next week to talk about it. At least that's what we agreed on at the last meeting. So is there anything to talk about here, James and everyone else?
Just need everyone to keep reviewing it. The idea would be to land it as an experimental, undocumented thing in master, which means, you know, as experimental, it doesn't matter if it doesn't go into V6 or not. We can just keep iterating on it. But please take your time to review it, and we'll discuss it in detail next week.
Just as a note, on this week's meeting agenda, sorry, on the meeting thread, Trevor Norris says, I believe my opinion on URL will be represented by others, but to make sure, -1 to global URL.
Right.
For what it's worth, I also object to adding any new globals that are not language features.
Is that even in the EPS anymore, James?
Yeah, based on in the EPS, it was added based on the conversation in the EPS. I mean, that because it's a global in browsers, most existing users of it would expect it to be a global. In the implementation, I separated that out as a separate commit that I could easily, you know, switch on and off, basically, about whether it's a global or not. So it really just, you know, depends on where we land next week on the conversation. So
great.
I can live with it either way.
I wouldn't be surprised that if in the future URL becomes some sort of ES whatever global, but
okay,
then
cool.
we'd have a conflict. I can foresee that as a potential possibility, the way things are going.
Yeah.
Cool. Great. So anything else? Hopefully it can be in the GitHub repo on that issue, or we can talk about that next week. We have 2 minutes, and I assume, Bert, you wrote kick Bert out of the CTC.
No. Yes, I did. Yeah, no. I mean, like, since you asked whether I would finally officially step down, yeah, that's
Okay.
kind of why I joined. So, but hereby, so long. Thanks for all the fish, and like, feel free to invite me if there's anything that actually needs my attention. So that's all. Is there any formal process for this? Like, does the CTC have to vote for it, or?
No.
No, voluntary resignation is voluntary resignation. But thank you for your service, and I predict you will be invited as an observer, but that's just my personal prediction. Go ahead, Jeremiah.
So I mean, you can do it if you want. Otherwise, one of us will make a pull request to remove you from the CTC list on the Node.js repo.
Okay.
I assume we would just put you into the collaborator section then, unless you for some reason also want to be removed. Not currently. There's no removal process from collaborators. So
sure, I'm either way. whatever you think is good.
The tar and feathering should come within a few weeks. So.
Yeah, but like now I'm feel free again to like say shit on Twitter about Node.js. So okay, well, anyway, done.
All right, we're right at the top of the hour, which means we're out of time, and I think we got through everything. Is there anything anybody feels we did not cover that we need to talk about?
Nope. We didn't have a private section at all, so.
Well, maybe what we'll do is we'll wait for the streaming to turn off, and we'll see if anybody has any private matters to talk about.
Yeah. In terms of Q&A, no one. I put up a solicitation for questions already on the stream, and no one has asked any questions, even though there's 5 viewers. So I think we're good to end here.